Ate My Gymsuit by Paula Danziger. Chapter 6. English class was really good. We worked hard, but it was fun. Certain things were always the same. Every Monday we had to hand in compositions, or writing. Wednesday we took our spelling test, and then there were the Finny Friday flicks. We could bring in popcorn while we watched the movies. After seeing the films, we discussed them. Book report times were great. Once we had to come to school as a character in the book we had read. It was like the thing in Smedley, only we were the characters, not ourselves. Getting into small groups, we talked about who we were and what happened in our lives. Then we joined with the other groups and introduced one another. It seemed as if the characters from the books were real people. Another time, after studying what propaganda is all about, we made up 1-minute television commercials to, quote, sell our book. We videotaped each other with the school's equipment, and after watching all of them, we talked about how they worked or didn't work. Writing a children's book was another assignment. First, we talked about what kinds of things were important, like plot, theme, time, place, and stuff like that. Then we each wrote a story and gave it to Ms. Finney to be typed up. After that, we illustrated them. She taught us how to bind them into books. When we finished, she tried to get school time off to use our books in a special project, but Stone wouldn't give it to us. So we met on a Saturday at our town hospital. We visited little kids who were sick, read our stories to them, and then left the books there so that the hospital would always have books for the kids to read. Some of the class even asked for and got permission to visit every Saturday. Another time, we talked about humor, satire, and parody. We decided to write our own television show and called it Dr. Sickbee at Your Service. It was the story of an orthodontist who puts on braces, who moonlights in a rock band, lives next door to a weird family, has a younger sister who ran away to join the roller derby, and solves mysteries in his spare time. We put it on videotape and picked out the best of the book commercials to use with it, and some of the other English teachers let their classes see it. Once, we had to learn a list of literary terms, vocabulary, and spelling words, and parts of speech. I spent a whole weekend studying, because I figured that the test was going to be a killer. Getting to class, we saw that Ms. Finney had made up a large game board that read, "This way to 10th grade." Each row was a team. We rolled a dice and landed on one of the categories. If we answered correctly, we got to stay there. If not, we had to go back. There were all sorts of penalty cards like, "Missed the bus," "Wait 1 turn," "Your locker is messy," "Lose 2 turns cleaning it," "Talking during assembly," "Go back 3 steps." The first team to make it to the end graduated to 10th grade. Another time, we walked in and there was a weird-looking guy standing with Ms. Finney. He wore a trench coat and a cap and had a pipe. "Class, I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Sherlock Houses, the defective detective." "Hi, kids. I have a problem, and Ms. Finney says that you're pretty smart and can help me. You see, I'm working on the case of the missing drummer." "I'd rather work on the case of the missing beer." "Cool it, Robert," said Ms. Finney with a smile. Sherlock continued, "The kidnappers left a ransom note, but I accidentally spilled coffee on it, and some of the words are blurred. Could you help me figure it out?" We groaned, but agreed to play their game, and Sherlock and Miss Finney handed out copies of the note with certain words messed up. We spent the rest of the period trying to figure out the missing words. At the end of the period, Miss Finney told us that Sherlock was really a friend of hers from graduate school, and that what we had done was an exercise in understanding words in context. It was fun. Chapter 7. We should have guessed that Smedley and Miss Finney were too good to last. There were all sorts of clues. We noticed that the principal came in to observe quite often, but they sometimes do that with new teachers. We were extra good when he was there. After all, it was Miss Finney's first year as a teacher, and we saw that she got kind of nervous when someone came in to check her out. So we tried to remember to raise our hands and wait to be called on. Miss Finney always said hand-raising wasn't necessary if we all respected one another. One day, Mr. Stone, the principal, walked in, sat down in the back, and put his clipboard down on the desk. We had been working when he came in, but everyone stopped. Miss Finney said, "Let's continue. Who knows what images are used in the story?" 7 hands were raised. Robert Alexander waved his. "All right, give one example, Robert." "He's stubborn as a mule." "That's a metaphor." Thomas Shaw yelled, "No, that's a simile." Miss Finney said, "Who's right? Joel, do you know?" "It's a simile," Joel answered, "a comparison of 2 dissimilar things using like or as." "Very good. Now, Robert, try to find a metaphor." "Okay, how about the room is a pigsty?" "Very good," said Miss Finney. We were very careful to do our best. We didn't answer more questions than we would have, but we didn't laugh as much, and it just wasn't as much fun. But we all knew that things like that are important to principals. I think that at principal school, they are taught to look for things like raising hands, checking hall passes, making sure that the window shades are at a certain level, and making announcements over the loudspeakers that begin, "This is your principal speaking. I must have your attention, please." Anyway, Mr. Stone must have gotten A's in all these areas. So we tried hard that day. When Miss Finney asked Robert Alexander to use philosophy in a sentence, he said, "The derivation of that philosophy obviously was influenced by a group of siblings." It made no sense, but it sounded good. When Mr. Stone left, Miss Finney laughed and said, "Look, don't try so hard. Just be yourselves." Robert said, "I thought Mr. Stone would be impressed. That's how he sounds at school assemblies." "But your sentence didn't make much sense." "That's why he'd like it." When Miss Finney picked up a piece of chalk and wrote a quote from Shakespeare, something about sound and fury signifying nothing. Sometimes she got into stuff that's hard to understand, but maybe someday I'll put it all together. 2 weeks later, we came into class and found a substitute.